Hello, good evening. It's quite daunting not being able to see more than the three people that are on the panel, but I guess we'll get started for the evening. And first of all, thank you for coming along and listening to our webinar. I hope my internet doesn't drop out too much. I'm sitting next to the little box, so hopefully it'll keep us going through the evening. First of all, massive thank you to Gareth from Selwyn Forge for coming on board with this webinar. Hello. And hopefully we'll have some good discussion this evening. We've not run through it all, so there'll be some interesting questions coming through from both sides, I'm sure. I'll start with a little introduction because I think there are quite a few people probably who don't know both of us as particularly well. So my name's Sarah. I'm a vet and based in North Canterbury here. I've been in New Zealand for about 12 years, and I trained at the Royal Vet College in London before that, a few years before that. I've got a strong interest in veterinary sports medicine and rehabilitation, and I treat both horses and dogs, but I see quite a lot of horses across the country and travel to see a lot of you from one end of the country to the other. I did training overseas in chiropractic, and I'm now a lecturer for the International Academy of Veterinary Chiropractic as well. And I've done training in various other sports medicine modalities too. Gareth, I think I've known pretty much since I've been in New Zealand, not quite, but maybe almost. And he's a farrier trained in the UK and has been in New Zealand a few years too. And runs Selwyn Forge in Garfield, and has a team of farriers there who are exceptional. And we look forward to talking to Gareth tonight about some really interesting foot cases that we can probably put a vet spin on as well. Thanks for coming along, Gareth.
Oh, you're most welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for inviting me. I'm quite excited to be here and do this and share the passion that we all have for the horses.
Yeah, I think so. And I think before we go too far on with the program tonight, I'll just ask people that either the chat or the Q&A box should be where we ask you for your thoughts and comments and questions. And Sarah, who's in the middle of my screen, I don't know about anyone else, but she's going to be, she's the Sarah from The Office, who some of you may know, and she will be keeping an eye on the questions and the chat, and will be asking us those questions as we go, and if not, we'll address them all at the end if there's nothing that is particularly relevant to the slide that we're on at the time. So I just did a brief rundown of what we're going to talk about tonight, and so I'll start things off and we'll talk about the reason that we're here tonight, and why do we need to look at things, and why do we need to care so much about foot balance, and we'll look at, I'll show a few slides with some postural changes which I suspect are due to feet, and I'll maybe ask Gareth for his input as well, and I can talk about it from the veterinary perspective and then give some background as to what I found with these cases too. Sarah, did you mean to raise your hand?
I did. Hey, apparently there's a wee bit of echo and feedback. I'm not sure if that's something that you can check on, and some people can't see the panelists, but I guess so long as they can see the slides, that's where we need to worry.
Yeah. Is that any better, the echo?
I think so from me.
Yeah. Okay. I had headphones in, so I've taken them out. Hopefully that'll be better, but tell me if it's not and we'll...
Yeah, no, feedback's coming back as positive, so cool.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. Thank you. So then I'll talk about posture, and I'll also do a little bit of an anatomy review, because I know we've got people from all walks of horsey life attending tonight, so I don't want to assume too much as far as anatomy and understanding and knowledge of anatomy. And then I'll pass over to Gareth for some thoughts and input as far as Barry's insight and how he approaches cases that maybe don't have optimal balance, what he looks at on the inside and the outside, and then probably some hints and tips and the like for those of us who do body work and have horses in general, as far as what we need to be looking at. I know there's some questions coming my way, and then I've got some radiographs and some slightly more unusual vet techniques to show you as far as how I look at things that can be affected by foot balance as well as other things. So I'm just going to move my view of everyone. Here we go. So I guess the big question and the reason we're here tonight is to talk about why hoof balance loading is important. And I think, you know, the old saying of no foot, no horse is so true and often overlooked. And the things that I see when I do body work on horses and when I look at horses for lamenesses and poor performance is that often I see changes in the feet, which I consider not to be particularly normal. And, you know, I think when I'm looking at performance and the like, it's a case of asking, well, has that come because of, or is it the cause of what's happening? And sometimes that can be a little bit difficult to work out. One piece of information that has really stuck with me since I started investigating body biomechanics and the like a bit more is that for every centimetre extra of toe a horse has, and I'm just going to put my little marker on. Here we go. Hopefully everyone can see that. So I'll show on this X-ray on the left of the screen here. For every centimetre of toe length that the horse has extra, an average sized horse, the force through the soft tissues on the back of the leg is equivalent to about 50 kilos. And that's when the horse is standing. Is that echoing? Or is that all right? I can hear a little bit of echo from me, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, there is a wee bit of echo. Must be the man cave.
Maybe it's the man cave. So yeah, for every centimetre of toe that we have in a standing average sized horse, that it puts about the equivalent of 50 kilos of pressure through those soft tissues of the caudal limb. And of course, that's where we see an awful lot of problems as far as lameness and tendon and suspensory ligament injuries. The image on the left here is actually a lateral foot X-ray, and I've had to block out the details because, of course, I have to maintain client confidentiality. But when I measured the distance from the of the toe here, it was approximately 3 centimeters, and that was in a small pony. So, you know, thinking about that in a big horse, I'm sure there are lots of changes that we see that probably cause them. I say probably, we know we have scientific data to show that the injuries of the soft tissues of the limbs are increased if the foot balance is incorrect. And at the bottom of this slide, I've put here body work, and we must take a holistic approach. And so I don't want you to think that everything and all of the things that we see as body workers and then as vets that look at poor performance is down to feet. It's just maintaining that holistic view of things. And often, you know, I look at horses that aren't performing right and the feet aren't right. So we need to address those before we go to anything else. And so the question then comes, you know, does poor foot balance give poor posture or cause poor posture? And I think these pictures of this horse here, and you know, Gareth, please feel free to give me your comments as well. But I see this posture really, really commonly, and I find that often when I'm assessing the animal, they not only are they standing in this way. So for those who are listening, this kind of posture with what I call camped under front legs and back legs. So the horse, instead of having legs that are perpendicular to the ground, the front legs come under the body and the back legs come under the body a little bit. And I find often that I think that the horse is loading, that when I look at horses like this, their heels are often quite collapsed, and they're not particularly comfortable on their feet. And as a result, when we look at the bit that I will look at as a body working vet, often they end up with fairly poor top line as well. And so, you know, again, you ask the question, can they really work and build proper top line if they're walking and working in shoes that aren't fitting them? Did you have any thoughts on that, Gareth, at all, as far as postures like this? Not wanting to throw you in at the deep end too early.
Oh, no, yeah, no, I agree. This is probably one of the biggest things we see too, mainly in thoroughbreds, occasionally in warm bloods, believe it or not. But yeah, we do. It's the biggest thing, and that's basically what we try and do. We try and put their body back to neutral and allow the muscles to go back to normal, I suppose, in the best way to actually, like you just say, build that top line and build the
Yeah.
bum. I find too many straight lines through the back end a lot of the time in the same posture.
Yeah, definitely. I actually, so this is a warm blood cross actually, who had just come back from, I think it had been sold and then came back to the previous owner, and we just couldn't get him to not stand in this posture. So he, I mean, of course, this top line was quite strikingly different. I'd treated this horse for a few years before he went away. And so, you know, we see, I see this quite often in lots of species, but I do agree, thoroughbreds often when they come off the track look like this. And this one here is a crossbred, which, yeah, again, tending to stand front legs under, hind legs under. And as far as how common these are, I see it most days that I'm working. And from the perspective of body working, when horses have feet that are, you know, have balance issues, it's an area that I have to tread carefully as a vet and as a non-farrier, but you know, that's where I open up discussions as far as getting things balanced, and for me personally, that's often where I end up suggesting that we do some foot balance x-rays, because that can give a lot less to you know, to create an argument about. So coming into the anatomy overview, so I'm not going to go too deeply into this, but I just had some nice drawings that I thought might just jog people's memories or introduce concepts a little bit if you're not hugely familiar with feet and horse anatomy. So these two pictures here are of course the very end of the horse's limb, and without the hoof in place or the soft tissues and the like, but the hoof sits approximately here. This is P3, this is the coffin joint. This is slightly on an angle, so you can't quite see the navicular bone fully, but it's sitting in here. This is the pastern joint here, P1, P2, and here is the fetlock with the sesamoids on the back, one on each side. And so the bottom part of P2 and the whole of P3 and the navicular bone all sit within the hoof capsule. So this is the picture from the side, and then the front to back view is what we, you know, and hopefully you'll be able to relate to these in the x-rays that I show you later on. But here is, hey Sarah.
Sorry, there was just a question from the previous slide about whether, I've sent it through, whether it's, and sorry, I've lost the chat for some reason, whether it was due to pain or poor conformation.
This one?
Yes.
This one was pain. That one was pain. That one was pain. And many of them, once the feet were addressed, were massively improved, and it didn't take as much body work as others to start seeing an improvement in the top line. So reiterating what Gareth said before.
Excellent. And the next one, sorry, I'll just interrupt again. Do you find this poor posture to be equally prevalent in horses who are shod and barefoot?
I see it regularly in both. Yeah. So I'm not, yeah, I think so. Gareth?
I actually don't see it as much with barefoot trims. The odd time we get called in to look after someone's run because they're hurt. They've all got nice heel, posture's good. I very rarely see it. Again, I don't take on too much more work, so I don't. Oh, yeah, I guess I don't. I feel like I don't see it as much with trimming than I do with shoeing. But you see far more a wider range of horses than I would.
Yeah, I think that I'm not sure that it's fair to put them in just barefoot or shod, because I think it very much depends on the knowledge and the skill level of the person doing the trim and the shoeing, if I'm able to say that, because you know I've seen both be done, I think, well, and both be done interestingly.
and it totally depends on the conformation of the horse. You know, you can't we can't solely put that down to one person's work or knowledge. It could be the fact that the horse was born a certain way and that was just the way it's going to be, and all you can do is you're on damage limitation basically.
Yeah, that's very true. Did you have another question, Sarah?
No, that's it for now. Thank you.
Cool. I've forgotten where I was. I'll so this one here, I think we were looking at the bony column here, and so yeah, we've got the P3, or what is sometimes referred to as the coffin bone, and the plaston bone, or P2, P1, and then this is the fetlock joint. You can't see these sesamoids because they sit on the back, so we're looking here at the front aspect of the foot. Oh, should have said gory picture coming up, sorry. But here's a picture on the left, which is the same as the first picture, but actually shows some of the soft tissues as well. So we have the coffin bone, or P3, the navicular, P2, P1, and the lower part of the metacarpal or metatarsal, 3, and then we've got the sesamoid bones here. As far as soft tissues, we have the digital extensor tendon, which is being followed by my marker there. Very often severed in things like wire injuries in the paddock, but actually horses can cope reasonably well without that. But on the back part here, we've got this one here, which is the deep digital flexor tendon, which runs all the way up there. And then you'll see here the superficial flexor tendon, which comes up on the outside of the deep flexor tendon, but doesn't go all the way down to the bottom of the pedal bone. And the deep flexor tendon goes directly underneath the navicular bone and the navicular bursa. And this section here, which is probably not particularly detailed enough, but that's the digital cushion, or the fat pad here called the digital cushion. And together with that and the heel cartilages, that's quite squishy, and that provides quite a lot of padding for the soft tissues before we reach the bony parts. There's a lot more we can talk about anatomy-wise, but that could be a whole series of lectures in itself. The picture on the right here, I quite like this picture. It's a picture from a dissection that I did with the chiropractic college when the other lecturers came over from Germany to run the course here in New Zealand last year, and we removed this is the hoof here. We took the hoof wall off. There's the sole, and these are the lamellae that are one of the major structures that hold the P3 in here to the outside of the hoof wall, and suspends it above the ground. I think Gareth's got some good pictures coming up later, so that's probably my favourite one. Speaking of which, I'll pass over to Gareth now for his section, and yeah, feel free to keep the questions coming through, and thanks, Gareth.
Oh, thank you. You're welcome. So just whilst I load these photos up, I'll just tell you a little bit how I kind of got more in depth in this over the last few years. I just kept basically asking questions, always asking why. Why is this not coming right? Why is this not getting better? And Sarah, you're gonna have to let me in so I can share content. Sorry guys, 2 seconds.
Oh, I selected that yesterday, but it didn't keep it. There you go. You should be able to.
Oh man, yes. And basically, yeah, I was just always, whatever I was taught as a young fella in the books. I come to Canterbury, New Zealand 12 years ago, and nothing would work. I couldn't get the feet to look how I wanted them to look, and I couldn't get the horses to stay sound, believe it or not. So a few years ago, it was one of my clients actually. Her name was Jamie Wilson. She inspired me to start thinking about why we couldn't get any progress on a horse. Now, I shod that horse for, I want to say 5 or 6 years, and yet I could not, for the life of me, get it to stand up. It was a thoroughbred. So she goes, I'm going to go barefoot. She's going to do it herself. I was like, brilliant, you go for it. Let me know how you get on. So, of course, she kept in touch. And over the years, the feet were getting better. And this was someone that had no experience, no training, no nothing. So a few years later, she comes back and says, right, I think we're ready to do something. And me and my colleague at the time looked at those feet and we saw way too much heel. But the feet looked really good. So what do? We chopped the heel off. And we spent another 2 years trying to get them to grow back. So Jamie inspired me personally to actually start thinking about the foot in greater depth and not just do what we're taught to do. So ever since then, I've been asking questions and questioning my own work too, all the time. And basically, this is what I come up with. So these should be loading up right now. We got something on screen?
Yep. Perfect.
Beautiful. And my echo's not too bad?
No, I think so. I think it's fine.
Awesome. Okay, so I had quite short notice basically to put this together. So I did some stealing. I went on to the University of Leipzig seminars that they've done, and I just found some cool basic photos just to give you basic ideas of what we look for basically in the feet. So here we have the evaluation from the front, and basically what you're looking at is the this is an ideal basically. This isn't what we see every day. This is what our brains are telling us we have to do, make things perfect. Obviously things aren't perfect, but we try and make them balance as best we can. And of course, every horse is different, every breed is different. So sometimes you're never going to achieve what you want to achieve because of how they are conformed. So just giving you guys a basic heads up to what we look for as farriers is basically when you're looking from, I need my pointer. Where's my pointer? Spotlight. There we go. So basically when we're looking at the horse here, straight on, what we look for is coronary band to be nice and level to the ground. Obviously the foot nice and level to the ground, and the distances between each side to be fairly even, as close as we can be. And of course that is basically an anatomical feature that we can use as a reference point to allow us to guesstimate with our professional eye where the bone column sits within the hoof. Because at the end of the day, unless we're x-raying every foot, we are purely training our eye on every horse to guesstimate what we believe that horse's ideal stance should be, or weight bearing through the hoof should be. So ideally, for me, I know when I've got a horse pretty good when I don't get any flaring. So of course, I believe flaring is uneven weight distribution through the bone column into the foot. Now, sometimes that could be through injury, trauma, fatigue, so many different reasons. And again, so going back to how we train our eye is we try and imaginary align straight down the center of the bone column through the middle of the foot. And basically that should hopefully give us somewhere close. That's looking from what we call the dorsal aspect, or front on, looking down the limb. You can, I have actually got one, but I don't rarely use it, is a laser pen or a laser line that builders use. That's another good way of actually trying to train your eye to see what you believe is straight. But when you put a laser line through the limb and it's not quite straight, you'll see the deviation, which is so basically your eye is telling you that it's pretty straight, but you get the laser line up and that's, you're out by probably, well, I don't know what you'd be out by, but just saying that is a good way to actually try and train your eye to see what a nice straight limb looks like. The other way we look at the limb, the foot, is from underneath. Here we are here. And basically what we look for is the center articulation, or Duckett's dot, which we find generally about a thumb's width back from the apex of the frog. And we go to the widest point, and that should be basically where our widest point is. So then we make our calculations based upon the center articulation. Now, sometimes in this horse's case, you get a really long toe. There's a way we look at it is we like to probably have 40% of foot in front of that point, and about, this is when we're shoeing, by the way, and about 50% covering behind. So of course the shoes would fit just a bit back here, and then the toe would fit here. So we're aiming for 40-50%. So like a 40-50 ratio basically. And that's just a rough guide, and it might not be ideal, and you may never get that sometimes, but that basically that's what I aim for personally. I don't know about other people. I know that it's different with the trotting industry. It may be slightly different with the racing industry. But for me personally, just keeping horses sound, I try and keep all the mechanics and central articulation all within good limits, basically. I'll go to the next slide somehow.
Did you have a question, Sarah?
Yes, just one that might fit in quite nicely here. There's a question, Gareth, is when striving for balance and angles, do you compromise the hoof capsule to get this?
I never compromise the hoof capsule. Sometimes I won't even touch the foot. So if I come across a horse and there's no foot there to touch, I won't touch it. And it will be a case of letting the foot grow out and then doing a little bit next time, letting it grow out, do a little bit more. So every time, I try not to. I don't like compromising the hoof capsule whatsoever. I like to leave the sole as thick as I can, the wall as thick as I can, and the frog as, I want to say, as bulbous as I can, but within reason. You know, nice. I like nice, healthy looking feet as best as I can. Yep. How do I slide over? Sorry guys, I'm trying to figure out. Oh, here we go. Oh yeah, so that's just another picture looking straight on from the dorsal aspect. So here we go. This is what we're talking about. So again, this was a horse we done about a year ago now. It came in, and I literally took no foot off this horse. There was nothing still on the bottom. And as you can see, I was that worried about the length of foot that I didn't touch the bottom, and I had to compromise my medial lateral balance. So as you can see here, I've got the length of the toe here. Hang on, where's my pointer gone? My length of toe is here, and then from my coronary band to my fetlock here is pretty long. So in my eyes, that I go off roughly a 2/3 to 1/3 ratio. I believe that foot is slightly too short for that pastern length. And you can clearly see I've got a shorter wall on this side and a longer wall on that side. So again, this is just another way of looking at a foot and how I look at balance. And yes, sometimes, you know, the gravel and the ground isn't great, but it gives you you can get pretty close, you know, you can get pretty close. And from the side angle, or from what we call the lateral view, I strive for HPA. So HPA is hoof pastern axes. Now, in an ideal world, you want your hoof wall, you want your pastern all to line up. So basically, we get that from going from the center of the joint, which center of the pastern joint, which is, again, without x-rays, it's all guesstimation, about here. And then we draw a straight line through the center of the next joint, the proximal phalanx and the proximal phalangeal articulation, and then straight down through the distal phalangeal articulation. And that's what I like to aim for. So of course, this was a new pony we done, and you can see by the angles of the heels, they're kind of running forward, the toes just here, sorry, the toes kind of just a wee bit slopey. I'm not terrible through here, but I'm just fractioning off compared to this angle here. And again, after this trim, we took hardly anything off the bottom. We just backed up the dorsal wall, and we pretty much got that straight away. So again, this is what we aim for as farriers. I believe we strive. Well, me personally, I strive for that HPA. It's a very good it's a good start. If you can get close to that HPA, you know that horse is going to be pretty sound. Again, this is just from the other side. Another telltale sign is the coronary band arc. You can always tell if the foot's not working too good because you've got a nice big arc in the coronary band. This is a good one. Okay, so for those who don't know, we've got something called the frog stay. Now, the frog stay is such an anatomically important part of the foot, or the hoof mechanism. There he is, there, right there. So what this does, it sits just below the digital cushion. And it's basically the top end of the frog, if you want to mean, like the internal. So you have the frog, the external frog or the horny frog, and you have the internal frog, which is in here. And then this is like the top edge, palmar, as in like to the back of the foot towards the bulbs of the heel. Now this actual area here is, it does a massive role, an important role in stopping the pastern from collapsing through onto the heels and crushing the heels. So when you've got a good frog stay and everything's working correctly back here, it will actually aid that pastern from coming right down and crushing heels, which is what, again, I see a lot in thoroughbreds. Now, the problem when that happens is from day dot, you haven't got any heel. So you'll see in the next slide, this is a nice healthy foot. It looks barefoot to me. I can't see nail holes. There we go. No nail holes, barefoot. We've got good heel alignment here. Oh, I'm drawing on it. Oops. We've got a nice toe alignment. We're pretty close. I mean, I can't remember his name. Chris. Anyway, guy in the UK called Chris done his thesis, his fellowship on these horn tubules, and he decided at the end of his study that it is almost impossible to get heel angle the same as toe angle. I had to slightly disagree in some states because there's some horses that are very upright and you can't get anything but equal all the way around. But most horses, I do agree, but we will never get the same heel angle as we do toe angle. This is an unhealthy foot. I think it's the next slide. Actually. Here we go. So this foot here is basically the same as this one here. Now what you can see on this one clearly is your heel starts here and completely underruns. We've got heel cracks, we've got stress cracks, all appearing. And I believe if we were to draw a pedal bone alignment in there, you're going to be there, and then I guess you're going to be, your pastern's going to be like that. So all this direct pressure from the limb coming straight down here is coming forward and then throwing the foot this way. So you get nothing but collapsing of that heel. So again, going back to this one here, looking from the underneath, your frog stay is non-existent. It's just not there. It's completely gone. It's completely flat. And in this photo here, there's actually a wee hole in the bottom there. So that's allows for infection, thrush. You know, if you've got frogs that are just, you know, flimsy and cruddy, then there's a direct link or a direct hole there to get straight into the internal structures and cause nothing but mayhem.
Gareth, do you mind if I ask a question?
Go for it.
When you see horses with the poor frog stays, is that usually a conformational anatomical thing, or is it damaged through, for example, this trimming of the frog? But
so most of the time, it's I think it's damaged from over lowering of heels or basically overloading the heels. But there are a few times where I see like non-existent heels and a frog stay. So yeah, I think it can vary, you know. I do believe it can vary. Like there was one I saw last week, actually. I only came to have a shoe tacked on. It wasn't me who shot it, but it had the lowest heels I'd ever seen and yet had a nice frog stay. So to me, that horse, in my opinion, is salvageable. But other horses I'm working on that have got no frog stay and completely flat back of the heel is ongoing, and I have to constantly keep them in some type of support system.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
I do have it. I think there's a slide a bit later on that has all that.
Sorry, Gareth, can you just please repeat the definition of a frog stay?
Oh, yep.
Yep. So
the frog stay is the anatomical. It's basically an anatomical structure. Where is it? This area here. That basically, I believe it stops the it aids in shock absorption purely because it's a caudal hoof and it's part of the frog and the digital cushion, and it actually supports this area in here in between the bulbs of heel and helps helps stop the pastern from completely coming down and crushing those heels. I don't know if you guys can see me. I can't see myself on the screen, you see, so I hope this is right. So basically I've got the pastern here, and this is the frog stay in the back there, and I kind of, it almost,
we can't see you, but we can see your screen at the moment.
Oh, okay, all right. Can you see my screen now?
I can see the picture of the hoof capsule,
Okay.
but not you.
That's all right, no worries.
If you were demonstrating. Oh, there you are.
Oh.
Oh no, you've gone again.
Okay.
Oh, there you
go. Have I got a hoof around? I haven't got a hoof with me. I'll try and explain it in another photo later. I think I've got a slide with a good angle that I can get it on. Cool. So I'll come back to that one. Is my pictures back up?
Yes, your pictures are up.
Sorry guys, I'm quite new to all this, and technology is not my forte. Okay. Another one to assess here. So basically, as farriers, this is what I believe we lack the most. We lack spending the time to assess each horse as an individual. Like, we just come in, we pick the feet up, we shoot, and we go. I believe we just spent a little bit more time assessing the horse before we even pick the foot up. I believe we'd paint a picture and be able to make more of a shoeing plan to best suit that horse. Now, sometimes that shoeing plan involves pads, putty, a little bit extra, and the clients won't like that for the money side of things. But I can guarantee you, by the time that whole hoof capsule's grown out in a year's time, you're going to have a horse that's going to be fairly problem-free. This was one that came straight off the track, and as you can see, I think this one's definitely conformational. The shot's not taken directly, so it's a little bit exaggerated, but very very clear lines here. And I don't know how long this was unshod for. Again, lady just put it off the track. So, but this is just what we look for. So before I've even taken these shoes off, I've stood back, I've taken pictures, I'm looking at lines, and we don't have X-rays on hand most of the time, So we just got to go off these anatomical areas or references, so points of reference to give us the best guidelines as to what we do and how we approach it. So this sometimes takes a few extra minutes, which most people don't have, but you got to do it sometimes. Here we go. So this is a different horse now. This isn't the same horse. So this is to better explain that question about the frog stay. So you can see here that we've got quite a healthy foot. Well, I say foot, healthy frog stay. So the back of the foot looks quite plump. It's not flat. We've got this area here isn't completely flat and going down this way. We actually have some type of a caudal hoof, which seems to be functioning quite nicely. Now, bearing in mind, this horse hadn't been shod for about 7 or 8 weeks, and it came down from the North Island. Nothing against North Island farriers. And I took nothing off the bottom of this horse, like nothing, apart from backing up the toe, which you can see right here. And now, so this is a good one. So this is the same foot from underneath. So to me, I had, apart from the smallest little bit of outside heel, I think it was, to just take a smidgen bit off. I had to really think about this foot. You kind of have to, we have to almost imagine with our X-ray eyes where our pedal bone sits. So this foot to me had nothing on the bottom to take off, but yet it was completely all shot out forward. I don't know if do you see much of this, Sarah?
Yep, I see. Yeah.
So for us, for me, this is again going back to ducket stop, center for rotation. I try and imagine with my X-ray eyes where the pedal bone is going to sit, and then I'm going to try and figure out from that point of apex of the frog where the tip of my pedal bone will be, And then from where my tip and my field bone is going to be, I need to try and figure out where my optimum breakover is going to be. So on this horse, I had nothing to take off the bottom. So basically all I had to do was take it forward and back it up. And from this photo here, from just backing up, not touching the heels at all, I think I've managed to get somewhere close. And even now, I believe that this length here is still slightly too short for this pasture. But in time, I think we did it actually before lockdown. I asked the lady which was that horse that came from the North Island, and I'd trimmed them all, and I couldn't remember which one it was. So it just goes to show how quickly those feet start becoming normal. The coronary band C, slightly raised. Again, that after the second trim, which I haven't got photos of, which I didn't realize I was going to need them, was definitely more relaxed and comfortable. So again, that's just another way of how us farriers try and perceive the bottom of the foot and go off our reference points to try and get as close to balanced as we can. So this is one I want to get Sarah involved on, because going on about heels and how they try and correct themselves and try and grow. Do we chop them out to make them grow back straight? Do we leave them? I'm unsure, but this is just a quick question. If anyone else has got any insight on this would be awesome, because it was quite exciting really for me. So this next slide here. So this is the area we're going to be looking at. It's going to be a zoomed in view. I think it's a different foot, but I didn't have another foot. I didn't have a bigger view of that foot to go off. So what we're looking at there is this heel area here. So this is the bar here. This is the central cleft. This is the frog area here, and then seat of corn. And I think the bulbs of hill are just up here. Now, when I scraped away at right at the top of the internal of the, sorry, not the internal, but of the lateral groove, I see, I don't know, you'll be able to see it better on the next slide. Sort of wavy lines through the heel. Now, if that was growing from one point and growing all the way down in a straight line, surely those lines would be straight. Those tubule lines of the heel would be straight. Oh, bugger, I haven't got it. Oh, I thought I had it. I obviously haven't put that one in. So I'll try and draw it in. So these tubule lines kind of go like that, a wee bit of a wave. Down here, wave. That first one wasn't very good. Try again. See, now up in this area, up in the top, we've actually got some quite straight tubules. But from this bit here, we've got some horrible kinking going on. What do you make of that? So I believe this horse has been trying to repair itself.
Yeah.
And then at certain...
One side?
Both sides.
Okay.
Yeah. So that just tells me that look how much pressure or strain goes through those heels to be able to push those heel tubules at different angles. Like it's like a wave almost. It's really wavy. It's really interesting. Anyway, yeah. Just thought I'd just show you that one, because that for me it was one of the most interesting picks I took this year.
Yeah.
And it just really opened my eyes to seeing how much the foot can change, especially in the heel area.
Did you have any follow-up from that one?
Did you... Me being me, I can't remember. No. I would have liked to, but I've just, yeah, as you know, you want to. Mm-hmm. And the amount of times people say, oh, I wish we took photos from the start, you just don't. It's just something we just don't do. It's our job. We just get on with it. Yeah. It's annoying, especially when we do things like this, because it's actually when we do things like this is when we really want it.
Yeah, I totally understand. I have so many that I'd love to put in pictures, and I think about it sort of 3 months into their treatment or whatever, and things look so much better. Yeah.
So going on about assessing balance and medial lateral balance and everything like that with the bottom of the foot, we go on to how we can help some of those horses that don't have the correct balance and HPA but without taking the foot off. So some of these horses just don't have any foot to take off, and yet we somehow need to get them to an appropriate angle. So once we get them to that appropriate angle, I believe then the foot does actually start to function correctly. So once the HPA is correct, the balance is correct, we get sole depth, wall thickness, I believe the foot will start functioning better, and then will start growing better. So I found a lot of the ones we try and correct, or we try and make them get as much foot as we can, can't get as much foot as we can with just barefoot or just normally shod shoes. I've tried because I don't like people spending money when they don't have to. But anyway, so my next subject is we're going on to how we can try and create better angles with the likes of the materials we have readily available these days, i.e. shoes, pads, putty, paw ends. Basically, we call it caudal hoof support. And for those who don't know, the caudal hoof is everything in the back half of this foot. It's basically the soft structures, frog, digital cushion, collateral collages, everything that helps shock absorb the back of that foot. So this one, I think I didn't get a before one, but I did get the after, and I think I'm fairly close. This is still a work in progress. This one's been going on for a long time. And this is the funky shoe we managed to put on it. It was an idea I got off a guy in the UK, and we call it an ellipse shoe. So basically, it's a form of wedging the foot, but we don't wedge it directly through the heels. We try and wedge directly through the center of rotation, or Duckett's dot, which is a totally out there concept. We went off on a whim, and by God, it worked. This horse was diagnosed with navicular syndrome, so they didn't actually know why, but it was just low heels, long toes, never grew any foot, never. And I shod this horse on, I could tell you, for about 6 or 7 years, and not once did I ever touch the bottom of the foot. I just backed up the toe, and all those years I never got any growth. We put these shoes on, which is, there's another angle that's not the best angle because I've got the van in the background and everything, but it's basically what we've used is an elite equilibrium shoe, which has got like a real low rolled toe, quarter clipped, and then I've got 2 other bits of concave, or 2 old shoes, and I've welded them in on top of the heel, and then welded them to the toe and fitted them nice and flush. Side view somewhere. Oh, there's a side view. Now, some of my pictures didn't load up, sorry. Okay. So basically what we got is, I'm going to guess here, we got the center of rotation. Well, this is move up your bug up. And then where I've ground the shoe back here, I've actually got this breakover way back there, but I've still fitted to the toe. And then we've just completely packed the whole back of the foot up with putty. So it's basically one big shock absorber under that. So we're taking all that, we're not taking all the pressure off the heel, but what we're doing is we're spreading that load through the whole back half of the foot here. And at the same time, giving it the appropriate angle that it needs to help start the process of normal function to the back of the foot. So sometimes you will never, not other people, but me personally, I've never been able to resurrect some feet until I've started going down this line. And there's only been 2 that I felt like I've really had to do this to. And the rest I can generally do with just like slight 1 or 2, maybe 3 degree wedge pads and a bit of putty in the back for maybe 2 or 3 shoeings. And basically what this horse had was no frog, never had any frog, never. And all of a sudden, 3 or 4 shoeings in, we're getting a frog, a nice big bulbous frog. And then all of a sudden we're growing heel. A year and a half on, and it's actually looking pretty good. So anyway, that was just another way of aesthetically getting the correct angles, even though we cannot physically do it with the foot that we have. I don't know how I'm getting there. Here's that one of the heels. See, they're all messed up. So sorry guys, going back to this other photo earlier, you can clearly see the growth of the heels and the funky lines that go through. You guys, yeah. sorry about that, guys. That should have been in a bit earlier, but things have been messed up. As far as that goes, here's that shoe. As far as that goes, that's how I basically assess or approach every horse when I come to it. Is like spend that extra 5 or 6 minutes, walk it up if you have to. But yeah, basically that's what I aim for. And sometimes if we cannot reach those goals first time, it might, it'll take another shoeing. The hardest thing I find is that the first 2 shoeings, it just doesn't look good. The feet just look average, but I'm preserving the feet. You've got to preserve as much foot as you can if it's not there. And a lot of people, they like to see it looking good, looking pretty, and they want to fast track to that what looks good. But sometimes fast tracking to what looks good long term doesn't actually help. So I think that was the basics. I've got a whole heap of other ones to go on, but these are whole other subjects to talk about. There's maybe one other about sole depth, which would be a good one. There's me sole depth. Here we go. So on X-rays are really good to tell you about sole depth. So we've got sole depth and sole thickness. I basically just want them as I like the sole thickness to be as thick as possible, and the sole depth, well, that depends on the breed, the horse, what type of work it is, what type of ground it's used on. So yeah, I just thought that's a quite important part, which is why we have X-rays. Is on certain horses that don't have any sole depth is not to sometimes you don't want to go into that horse until you've got X-rays, purely because you're just unsure of how much you've got. I mean, yeah, you will hit blow, which is fine, if you just hit a wee bit, but if you're going in too deep. But it's always, if you have an inkling in the back of your head that you're just not sure, just say, hey, look, let's just get some X-rays on this before we do anything. It's always best to play safe than go in hard and lame your horse. Always look at it from just take a stand back basically, and just check it out. Again, just other limb deformities, nothing major here, guys. We're kind of going off the hoof balance track here. There was one slide that just showed long term. Oh no, it's not there. Of course, it isn't there. No, okay, I won't go into that. But yeah, no, basically that's how we look at these feet and try and assess the balance. Is literally from those first 2 slides. It's the easiest and best way. And then when you're on concrete, it makes things way easier for us. And this is all without X-rays, by the way. This is just points of reference that we see and we try and stick by. And if we can stick by them as best as we can, and we don't get flaring, and the horse is sound, we're generally on the right path. If your horse is camped under, low heels, long toes, the horse isn't going to use its engine very well, which is his back end. He's going to end up starting to pull himself from the front. When he starts pulling himself from the front, or dragging from the front, I call it, they get sore shoulders. As soon as the shoulders go sore, they end up sitting on their bum and then working the bum too hard, and they get sore bums. So it's like a chain reaction of badness. And most of the time, I believe it just stems from having inappropriate or not optimum angles on the lower limb. And I think Sarah's going to talk about the effects of the upper limb as it has already talked about it. Sorry, having those imbalances through the feet that then causes the excess on all the way up through the top.
Yeah, certainly, and there's a reasonable amount of research to show that. How did you say it? Suboptimal balancing of angles contributes or causes soft tissue damage, and in that I also include joints, because the cartilage in the joints is soft tissue, and that can be accelerated through suboptimal foot balance and the like. And yeah. I had one question for you, Gareth. As far as I get a lot of people asking me about the high-low heels and the club foot and the flat foot and how to manage it. Do you have any sort of general thoughts that you can share with us on that?
I can tell you that every third horse I shoe pretty much has a slight high and low heel syndrome. So, my thoughts. I I shoe the feet individually. Generally, the low heel, the flatter foot is the one that's, I believe, is most weight bearing. I think most of my clients have heard the same story. I think it stems from birth, dorsospinous process, which I think is the withers. Doesn't quite set upright enough. Is my camera on?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
So I believe it kind of sets just off at an angle rather than, every horse is left and right, as we know. So some are like that and some are like that. But I believe that the dorsospinous, the withers, just set a wee bit too much. Now, the way I think about it is if that sets or is in a position, when the muscles grow around it, which are let me get this right, the supraspinatus and the infraspinatus, and also the trapezius, the muscles up in the top of the withers there. Surely, if I was thinking logically as a human, I'm going to build up more on one side. So maybe one side's going to have a shorter muscle and the other side's going to be longer. And this surely must have an effect through the whole limb as the horse develops and grows. And I found recently that there's a few foals that are obviously, one slightly high, one slightly low. And I've actually got a photo of it, but I'm going to take too long trying to find it. I believe that trying to stimulate the upright foot will inevitably make the growth plates of that leg grow slightly longer and possibly stretch those muscles a wee bit more, or lengthen them fractionally, which then hopefully would even them up. The only reason I say that is because on this one particular foal, I ended up trimming as much foot off as I can off the flat foot, and then aesthetically with Equilux hoof glue, building the upright foot up, and I think I gave it about 8 to 10 mil of extra height. Now, apparently this young foal from birth had never stood square, never ever, not once. And no matter how hard she tried, she'd pick the leg up, she'd make it stand square, and it would straight away move. Well, the second I put this foot down, he put it back in. He put the foot down into the usual position, and then went straight level. Like it was like looking up at the god, going, "Did that just happen?" So this, I don't know, 6 to 10 months of its life, it's always stood 1 foot forward, 1 foot back, and all of a sudden, by making that upright foot longer, aesthetically with glue, he stood level. So to me, that tells me that it surely can't be the foot. It's got to stem from up higher. And the amount of theses I've read, the amount of research I've done on it, no one, the ones I've read, no one's ever mentioned anything about the muscles groups higher up and how the horse is put together up top. It's always about the foot. We've got to do this, we've got to do that. So that made me think. So basically what I do, or when I'm trimming or shoeing those feet, I literally try and shoe them as an individual. So as long as I've got my angles correct, my hoof pastern axes, my medial lateral balance, we're going to be somewhere close. And I think we'll never ever get them. Well, I can tell you now, I've never made a single one look like a pair, but I can tell you that by keeping them as close to normal per that leg as you can, the horse is only it can't get worse. It will always go slightly better on one rein. But it won't go worse, so you're going to get, so if a horse was 100% perfect on both reins, I believe with those upright feet and the flat feet, you're only going to get them sort of close to 80%. So going 100% on one rein and only 80% good on the other, so that's my take on those. Shoe them as an individual or trim them as an individual limb.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. And I think in response to what you said about the muscles, first of all, I think there's possibly a study in there that we could look at doing at some point. But second of all, it comes back to what I said earlier is, I tend to look down at the bottom at the feet, and then I also look up at the top at what's happening in that thoracic sling and the shoulder muscles and also the back. And of course, there's usually a saddle that's put on top of some of those muscles as well, which can impact how the other ones all work. And I know that's in older horses, but you see quite marked differences in the posture and position of the dorsal scapula. And I've, you always wonder, is that chicken or egg? Did that come first or did the feet come first? And I would speculate whether in some it's one end and some it's the other, but actually have nothing to back that up.
And then as as you've probably seen, there's a lot of hereditary involvements there too with breeding. You know, there's certain mares and stallions that will breed a super duper upright foot to the point that by the time it hits 2-year-old, you've got a split right up to the coronary band that you can never get rid of. So I believe there's that side of it too. You know, it's not purely one end or the other. Sometimes it can be it's just hereditary. It's bred in, you know.
Yes.
In my opinion, I've got to say my opinion.
Yeah. I think, yeah, there's probably a strong genetic play there as well. Yeah. Now, if I share my screen and go through, oh, hang on. There we go.
Well, can I interrupt with a couple of quick questions first?
Absolutely.
So the first question that I do have here was, they're both for Gareth predominantly. Some horses, will they always need the remedial shoeing like you've shown, or can they be shod like this for a while and then grow correct angles?
So, yeah, I believe that majority of the time, once we've got once the hoof has grown out, normally about a year, takes a good year. Once that's grown out, I believe on the majority of cases, we can go to normal shoeing or normal trimming. I had one case a while back now, and honestly, 10 months down the line, I'm saying, actually, I don't think we need any of this anymore. And it was 10 months. So what's that? What, 3 or 4 shearings? No, 5, 6 shearings. And we came out of all the pads, all the putty. And yeah, I've just got normal shoes on that horse now, and they're going great. I've got probably one that just has a flat pad on the flatter foot, purely because its sole thickness is so thin. But other than that, yeah, I generally believe that you can get to a certain degree of normality, as in, i.e., you don't need all the special shoeing. Bearing in mind, this is a very big factor or point that I haven't discussed, is the conditions, our environmental conditions. Some of the worst horses' feet I had on my run, flat, low heels, long toes, have never looked so good this year, purely because I believe we've had so much rain. So the ground soften up. So I do believe that conditions tell a huge role, make a huge difference to feet. I think the last probably 4 or 5 years we've been pretty dry, even in the winter. And honestly, it's been, some of the feet have just been I've just been holding them together, like just about holding them together. And all of a sudden now, the last 6 months, I'm looking at them and I'm looking at the owner going, oh wow, these are the best feet I've ever seen. Like, what's, in all the years I've been shooting, how come they're looking so good? Like, what have you done? What have you changed? I'm asking them what they've done. They're like, nothing. And the only thing that has changed is that we've had slightly wetter conditions this year. So again, depending on ground conditions as well, and how much you ride the horse, I think you can get to some type of normality without the use of special shoes and remedial work.
I think kind of following on from that, it's the next question was, can you address the grazing foot, usually the flatter foot, I think, and what we can do to improve these to balance the horse better? Yeah, obviously we can't do the same things as we would in the foal. I think that's all of the question. Yeah.
So how do we address the grazing foot, the flatter foot?
Yeah.
I try and leave as much sole on as I can. Sometimes I'll map the foot out, so I'll draw my lines on. Like you saw in one of my first pictures there, on the underneath, and try and figure out where my anatomical features are, i.e. the pedal bone, the tip of the pedal bone, the wings of the pedal bone, and the center of rotation. And once I've figured that out, I'll decide whether I can pull that toe back hard enough, but not cause lameness. And if I can't, I do actually, there's a certain shoe I make. It's almost, well, you can buy them actually. They're called equilibrium shoes. They're a real good shoe with a big, long, flat, wide toe. Actually, I've got one of my handmade ones here. And basically what that does is allows you to fit to the toe, but you bring back the breakover point almost to its optimum. Is my video running?
Yes, it was, yeah.
Oh, I can't see that. Here we go. I'll give you So here we go. Here's one of these flat shoes. So far wider in the toe. Actually, I'll show you how wide it is. 2 seconds. So here we have a normal concave shoe. And then we have the big wide flat toe shoe. So you can clearly see it's got way more. So I can, with this shoe, I can actually fit to the point of toe and then have my breakover set right back. So on this shoe here, my breakover would be literally at the point of the toe.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
and on this one, it's way back here.
I'll just interrupt there. It seems that people can only see Sarah's screen currently.
Oh, sorry about that.
Turn your screen off, Sarah. I should have just recorded
if
that.
I stop sharing, is that better? Can people see you now?
Let's see.
Sorry, I'd been preempting that.
Are we good to go?
I think so, yes. Yes, we are.
Right.
It looks
I'll
like.
start again. So, if I can get out the way. So you see here, we've got the same size shoe, but with the thickness of this toe here, sorry, the width of the toe and the width of the toe. Okay, so with this shoe, I'll fit to this one here fits there, and I've got all this space under here. So my breakover is literally up the top here on this part here. All right, when I spin it around, my breakover is way back here. So I've got a good 12 mil of distance between my point of breakover and the tip of the toe. Boom. Yep, so what we're doing is we're bringing back optimum, but without compromising foot or nailing ability. So obviously when you're bringing a foot back or trying to bring it back hard, you really got to be careful of where you can nail that shoe on. So you can, this type of shoe, and that's equilibriums as well. You've got more safety by pulling the foot back, but without taking too much foot off. So you're getting those angles and almost optimum breakover without compromising nailing. I haven't had much luck on severe cases just keeping them barefoot. I did have a plan in my head, if I find another one that comes along, is equi-casting or maybe some type of boot system that we can really pack the back of the foot out with like, I think there's some boot systems at the moment for laminetics that have different grades of memory foam. I believe that there's a possibility when they are barefoot that we could do some type of booting system that would hold them at a slightly better angle. And I know on some of the boots the clients have got, I've actually rasped away a nice big long breakover on the front of that boot to help it. But other than that, just address that grazing foot as an individual and try and keep your basic parameters and assessments of those limbs to the norm, or as best as the norm as you can, i.e. HPA, medial lateral, central for articulation. If I'm going too fast with all these words, let me know, because it's all just coming out. So central articulation is basically the ducket stop. If anybody wants any more information on that, just flip me an email. I can send you those slides just so it kind of sticks in your head, if you want it, that is.
And I think I've put your email up on the last screen, on the last slide of the presentation. So I hope that was okay, so that we can, if people have further questions, we can take those. I can see that there's been quite a few questions come in, but should I carry on with the last few slides, and then I'll see how much we can get through, and then we'll take questions.
Yeah, good idea.
I think that might be good, yeah.
At the end. Clearly this is something that would be a sort of a series rather than a single webinar, but you know, there's a lot to talk about. Okay, so moving on from discussion with Gareth, I think, thank you, Gareth, for covering all of those points, and it's really nice to see the way that that's addressed without the use of x-rays. And I think now is a really good time to really promote that team approach to health that I'm a really big fan of, and you know, I think very often with a skilled and trained eye, you can see a lot of the things that you need to see without X-ray vision, but there is the opportunity to put to use X-rays, and not so much in New Zealand, but advanced imaging as well, to look at feet and the balance and alignment and the like. In this slide here, what I've put in is the you know, people often ask me what I do as far as looking at poor performance, and it's not so straightforward as simply looking at lame horses. You know, I see a lot of horses with problems, and it's a case of working out why their performance or attitude has changed, and where the source of discomfort is coming from that is not allowing them to perform or to behave at their optimal. And so that can be discomfort from a multitude of places, including the feet. And so while, you know, I am definitely an advocate for maintenance and prevention, I think that what we're looking at can quite easily tip over into a poor performance issue if it's not maintained correctly. Even if it is maintained correctly, things can go wrong, you know, and we all know horses have accidents, and we have accidents. So, you know, that's something that we have to address reasonably regularly. As a note, this picture here, oh, actually, sorry, I'll put my laser pointer on. So this picture on the right here is an MRI image of a horse's foot. And so we don't have access to MRI for horses in New Zealand yet. There is a CT scanner at Massey, and the nearest MRI scanner that I'm aware of is in Sydney. So for the moment, it's not something we have access to, but when I've worked in the UK, it's been really, really useful for imaging soft tissues. So going to sort of the basics of imaging, on the left here, we have an X-ray or a radiograph of a horse's foot and bony column, and that shows us simply the bony tissues. We can see that there is soft tissue, and there's hoof wall and capsule, and then heels, and we kind of have to imagine that there's some degree of digital cushion and squishy stuff in here, but it's slightly whiter than the bit that's less dense, which is this is the pastern joint here. And so really it's not that effective for soft tissue imaging. Whereas if we come across here to an MRI scan, you know, how great would it be to be able to see all of this? And I know when I worked in the UK before I came here, we started to send horses much more regularly for MRI scans, and actually navicular syndrome often ended up as things like digital flexor tendon injuries that you just can't see on this sort of image, because it comes over the bottom of the navicular and it joins to the pedal bone here, but you can't see it until you start looking at these advanced imaging modalities. And following on, sorry, my annotation is very small on this right image, but following on from what Gareth said as far as looking at alignment and angles, and I think that's something that sometimes you need X-rays to be really sure that what you're seeing on the outside is what's happening on the inside, or to confirm what you're seeing on the outside. And so these two pictures here are the same horse, the same picture, the same foot. And if you look at this picture here, I am unable to annotate as we go, but basically what you want to see is this line to go through as it does on this right side. And we want it to go through, starting at the fetlock, which is just not quite in the main beam of the image, and through the center, down through the center of the pastern joint here, so center of this point here. And then ideally, if we have correct hoof pastern axis alignment, you want to see stacking of the bony column. So this line should continue on through the bottom, through the center, sorry, of this bone, and come out a lot further forward than it does on this image here. I've also put, and I'm not sure how well it will come out on your screens, but here we have what is sometimes referred to, or often referred to, as the palmar or plantar angle of the pedal bone. So we compare the horizontal line, as it should be from a radiograph or X-ray, to the horizontal line of the bottom of the pedal bone. And in this case, I haven't measured it with this, this software, but it's a very slightly negative angle, which means that the toe is pointing upwards, and that's probably all contributing to this lack of bony column alignment. And if you look here, I didn't mark the front of the dorsal wall of the front wall of the hoof, but there's a slight divergence there of the hoof pastern and the hoof wall axis, and a slight bulging of the foot there too. One thing I would say when looking at X-rays or radiographs is it's really important to get really straight pictures, a little bit like photographs, and you saw in some of Gareth's slides before that if you stand on a slight angle, things can look way worse than they actually are. And it's the same with radiographs. You know, we really, as vets, when taking the X-rays, we really work hard to make sure that these are as straight as possible. Now, in I'm not sure if it shows in any of the slides I've got coming up, but sometimes actually with the horse standing straight, and when you take an X-ray, what you want is for the foot to be on a straight surface, and it's usually slightly raised so your X-ray machine can get the right center of focus, which is about here. The horse needs to be standing with the cannon bone vertical, so perpendicular to the ground. So they must be on flat concrete, and it must be that the horse is weight bearing fully. Having said that, if there's any medial lateral imbalance of the foot, then you can end up with it. It's simply impossible to take a truly straight X-ray where these two lines of the bottom of the bone are totally superimposed on each other. So we have to interpret that based on how the horse is standing. I included some images here just to briefly talk through, and I know we're running quite short on time, so I won't spend too much time on those, but this image here, I'm sorry the toe is cut off, but you can see that if toe is left to get too long, you end up with basically this extra fulcrum. So the toe tends to put extra stretch on the structures in the back of the limb here, and also that will tend to cause crushing of these heels if it's allowed to get too long. As Gareth said, though, you know, some will have surprisingly uncrushed heels with really long toes, and I imagine those are quite nice to work with, as you saw before. This is a dorsal palmar. I think it's this foreleg view. And coming back to what Gareth said about flare, you know, we can see on the image here that we've not got the same sort of angle, and this is looking straight forward from front to back through the hoof and the resulting joints. From an X-ray perspective, we judge them as being straight by these sort of smiles or mustaches of the joints being not they're even. So there's not, I didn't put one in that's not loaded appropriately, but this side opens up or the other side opens up. So you can see that there's correct loading of the joint, but actually we've got some flare of the hoof here, quite a lot of distance between the wood and the pedal bone. So there's quite a marked sole depth there, but also the balance. And for some reason my markers didn't come out on this, but when looking at this, the side to side or medial lateral imbalance of the pedal bone is such that when we took the lateral picture of this leg, it was actually not possible to get a straight view through the joints because it was out of balance. This picture on the left here is side, so medial to lateral view, again looking at palmar or plantar angles, and I often get asked about palmar and plantar angles of feet, and there are some centers that look quite extensively at this. And I think if you focus just on that, it can sort of miss the fact that you also want to have good bony column alignment. And so in this horse, actually, when I measured these, and it's not come up with the number, but it was actually pretty straight. But when we look up this bony column, you can see that if we were to draw that imaginary line, it would come down here and somewhere through the back part of the pedal bone, where actually we want to not be doing that sweep And so that's where X-ray can really help us. You know, whether that's as obvious in the horse that we're looking at here without the X-rays or not, I think that's where, when we look at poor performance or low-grade lameness or behavioural problems that are often then relatable to pain, things like this can really come to light, and we can then, I'd like to work with people to try and address these to see whether that helps the horse or not. So something else that I have in my toolbox, and you know, we can use to first of all look for lameness, but second of all to look at whether what we're doing, so if I call it an intervention, that can include things like trim, you know, to how we trim the foot or how we shoe the foot, and it can also include things like saddles and bridles and the like, is that we can actually objectively measure data that tells us whether or not what we're doing improves the horse's movement or not. And it can get a little bit high tech, but actually there are the programs we use are really effective at giving us really usable data. And so one of the items, so I use the Objective Gait lameness assessment software together with the biometrics, which I'll talk about in a second. And what this is it's a series of motion detectors that we attach to the horse. And we then, with this one, we look just at trot, at how the horse is moving. And what that then gives us over a period of however many strides is data as to whether or not the horse's movement is symmetrical. And if it's not symmetrical, it gives us a guide as to where it's not symmetrical. And you've probably all heard that, you know, you can line up 10 vets, 10 equine vets, and ask them how lame the horse is and where it's lame. And you'll probably get 10 plus different opinions on where that might be. And so this is, you know, really, really helpful. It's not going to replace the subjective eye, but, you know, that I can tell you the particular horse that we took this data from was actually very, very marginally lame, but we can actually see. So the blue dots here are the pole marker, the pink is the wither, and so there are data patterns that are published, and that's probably getting a little bit too nerdy for this talk, but that show whether the pole and the wither are together or separately, determines whether it's a hind or a foreleg lameness, and then the pelvic sensor gets its own circle, and these dots are shown in black. And so it's a bit like a bullseye. You're wanting the movements away from deviation from the center not to be all in the same place. And if they are, it's indicating that a horse is not symmetrical and maybe lame. Symmetry and lameness is a whole nother discussion. I think we could probably fill another webinar with that. I'm not going to go too deeply into it. So I'll talk you and show you a couple of videos just now as far as the biometric gait analysis. Now, this is actually really, really helpful because first of all, we take slow motion video of how the horse moves. And as Gareth said before, if you can watch a horse moving and when you're looking at it to assess hoof balance and foot balance and how you might, you know, where you are on the spectrum as far as owner, farrier, trimmer, body worker, I think really looking at them moving can really tell you quite a lot of information, and it certainly tells you the way that they load their foot. Taking it one step further, we can use the biometric gait analysis to break it down to the nearest degree, point of a degree, and millimeter of movement, which is maybe going a little bit too far, but also you can really pick up on these asymmetries and whether the swing of a limb is affected in, or the movement of a limb, sorry, is affected in the swing phase or the stance phase. So the swing phase is where the leg is being swung forward, and then stance is the bit where the horse sort of takes its weight and then steps over and goes back to the swing phase. And as I've said in the slide here, we can use interventions and measure them afterwards and determine whether things have got better, worse, or stayed the same. And so that's quite a nice tool to have if we're looking at poor performance cases, but also, you know, if we're thinking about changing things up as far as management. I'll skip through this because it gets a little bit technical, but basically with the gait analysis, you can flip one side over to the other and actually watch the horse moving. So you can mirror image your video and you can then see a horse moving from right to left. Of course, all horses are, or most horses are one side or the other, a little bit like humans, but it's really useful to see just how different those stride lengths and movements can be. Now, hopefully my video is going to work. I might have to come off the laser pointer. And I'll skip through here. So this is a slow motion. This is exactly what we record, and we do it in slow motion. This is the sort of thing that you can do at home though. And we've got the horse here marked up with the white markers that are picked up by the camera. Hopefully that's not breaking up too much for you on the screen. There is another one in a second. There we go, I think it's caught up now. And so you can really see as the horse is placing its feet, you can actually see whether or not the horse is landing toe first or heel first or really flat-footed. And I like that, I've lost my marker because of the video, but you can really see how those shoulder muscles and the supportive and movement shoulder muscles of the forelimb and also the rump muscles are working or engaging and or are showing tension. And it's really quite a handy tool to have. You don't necessarily need the biometric analysis to look at what's going on. And I do encourage people to do this with their own horses to really get a feel for how they're moving. And you can really see whether one foot is placed differently to the other and how their back swings through the movement. I think I've seen the same video again. So I'll just show you this second one here. I think it's about, sorry, there's a bit of a wait and I didn't have time to snip it. But as we come through here, the difference that you see then at trot, and you can really see how the horse moves its back, but also the length of stride and the use of each limb. And we can then go with the biometrics and try not to play that again. There we go. And so this is then in different horse, but this is what we can then measure is the distances between those markers. And you can see the horse here is going from right to left, and then this one is going left to right. So if we then skip to the next one, what I've done is flipped over the right, the left to right picture. So the horse looks like it's going the same way. And we can actually measure. So these markers are all put on very specific bony landmarks. And so you can see that there are slight differences from one side to the other as far as the distances between those various points. So there's the stifle, the hip, the tubercoxa, and you see there's a centimetre here and a centimetre there. And so it's really quite specific. We can then break it down and look at, and importantly from a foot balance perspective, or for, looking at feet, the drop in the fetlock. And so in this horse here, you can see there's quite a marked difference. So again, this picture at the bottom, I'll go back to my laser pointer. So this picture at the bottom here, I mean, you can actually see in the photo that there's a lot more tension through the horse's body as it goes through this stance phase of the placement of what would be, my brain stopped working, but what would be the placement of that foot. You can also see that there's this, and this was repeatable on the video, is that there's a lot more kick up of the surface with that foot being placed to this one. And the fetlock drops by about 15 degrees extra on this limb. I won't spend too much time on this, but this is the kind of report that you can get back, and you can then you can compare this to the one, if you change something, if you trim the feet differently, and just see whether or not you're seeing more positive or negative changes. I popped a couple of references here. There are, as you probably appreciate, there are hundreds and hundreds of references, but for those that were interested in reading more, those are there. And that brings me to the end of my my part of my talk. I know we've had some questions through, and I also know that we're probably getting towards the end of people's concentration, possibly mine. But I'll just come back to see if there were any questions. I'll put the details there for contact should anyone want to, although I speak entirely for myself when I say I do my best to get back to people with questions, but it's not always the same day. Before we go into the questions, actually, Sarah, I just really would like to thank Gareth for joining in today. It's been a bit of a whirlwind week. I sort of collared him into helping with this or presenting his part of the webinar this evening, and I think we decided on Tuesday that we were going to do it, and so both of us have put together stuff as well as trying to juggle businesses and lockdown. So apologies if there have been any technical glitches, but I can say from me, and I know from many people listening, that Gareth, we really appreciate you providing us with your knowledge and your expertise this evening. So thank you.
Oh, you're most welcome. You're most welcome. Thank you for inviting me. It's been fun. And
Sorry,
yeah,
it has been fun.
most of the time I start yabbering on about what I'm passionate about, and people will just go, "Oh yeah, you know." But to be asked about it, I'm like, "Oh my god, yeah, let's do it."
No, it's great to listen, and you're a wealth of knowledge. So yeah, I think I'll let Sarah go with all the questions that we've had. Many we may have answered already, but are there any?
I see you'll probably be better able to judge whether these have been answered already anyway, but one that came through, the first one that came through was, if the hoof is in healthy condition and already trimmed correctly, with the lockdown at present, how long can a horse go without a trim, both barefoot and shod?
You want me to answer this one?
I think that might be yours, really. Yeah.
So I'm only going off of last lockdown. Last lockdown, I had some of my clients went, because I'd forgotten about them as well, so it wasn't their fault entirely. But some of them went about 6-7 weeks past their due date, so they were almost like 12-13 weeks. And I'm not going to lie, people weren't riding. I believe the horses weren't under any type of work stress, mental stress, feed stress. And I tell you, I didn't see not one horse that I was like, oh my god, this is such a terrible state. So I believe if you're not riding hard out and you're just taking it easy, I don't think, and your horse hasn't got any serious conditions. I think it's a little bit different with lemonetics. I do think that, on week 6-7, you might need to just put some intervention in. But most of the time, yeah, I believe those horses can go quite happily. And the horse will tell you. The horse will tell you if he's lame. If he's going lame because his feet are too long, then yes, you need to do something about it. Otherwise, if they're not lame and they're happy and you're not riding them, I think they can go longer than most people think. Lockdown last year surprised me. It really did. I was surprised to see the state of the feet, what they were in, for being so long, and the horses weren't overly bothered at all. But that's just from what I've seen, and the horses that I do. I spoke to a few of the boys, but to be honest, I can't actually remember talking about the afterwards. It was always before and during the lockdown, but I can't remember. I think everyone was just too busy. Like the phone call stopped between us fairies, after lockdown.
It's blocked from our minds.
And would it be worth getting hoof balance x-rays done periodically alongside good regular shoeing, or would it only help if there were underlying issues?
Again, going off. Sorry, Sarah.
I was just saying we can give both views.
Okay, so my view is, again, going from those basic points of reference from those first few slides I showed. If you've got any concerns about imbalance, coronary bands being slightly wavy, low heels, then yes. But generally, if your horse feels good under saddle and it looks good in a straight line and everything looks within tolerances, I suppose, within those limits, then you should be okay. But I would always, if any time a client says to me, Gareth, shall I get x-rays? I always say to them, yes, it would be great as a point of reference. So no matter what happens in the future, you've got a point of reference to go back to. So that's my take on that.
Yeah, I think probably many of the horses I see for body work or, you know, chiropractic work and or performance stuff. And one thing I would say is that I do see a lot of people who have had a lot of body work done, and the horse doesn't get any better. And so it's probably a fairly skewed view of things, but usually the first thing that I recommend for people, if they haven't had the saddle fitted, is to have the saddle fitted, but also foot balance x-rays, because you shouldn't need, you know, unless many of the higher performing or training at higher level horses that I see do need that regular maintenance to just keep them at their peak, a little bit like human athletes. But for horses that aren't doing that, if they are needing to have some body work, and especially if that then doesn't hold for particularly long, then I usually start to then probably work from the ground up, to be honest. And so that those are the ones that I do usually recommend. And I think absolutely work with the markers and the lines from the outside, but certainly that point of reference is great, because sometimes you'll take those balance x-rays and actually you'll find that there's a whacking great side bone or some other pathology there that has never been picked up. And so, you know, that might be why the horse is going the way it's going, and it's nothing to do with the, you know, the trim or the shoe, but actually the stuff that's going on inside the horse. And so you can pick up pathologies there as well. So I think probably something like a 12-monthly foot balance is probably not a bad idea. And for those that have issues, then more regularly. But it's very much an individual thing, and I tend not to sell a one size fits all.
Actually, moving on, you mentioned the side bone there. What would you recommend as to how to shoe a horse with quite bad side bone? That was a question for Gareth.
Okay, yeah. So again, you need a football. You want you need to watch the horse walk. You need to see how it's landing. If it's landing hard on the side bone side, then you need to lower it. We generally put we actually make quite a few of our own shoes, so we generally put a side bone shoe on, which is pretty much a safed off outside branch. So in layman's terms, we're chamfering or smoothing off the sharp edge of the shoe, so that when it does contact the ground, there's no jar. It's more of a slide or a slight give. You can do that with normal shoes. You just got to hammer in a big bevel basically into the side of the shoe. But for me, it's very important to watch it walk up and make it land as level as possible, but not landing high on the outside. And sometimes you have to slow motion video that to see that. So yeah, that answers that question, I think. And real quickly, going back to the last one about x-rays, another little point to add is that as what we call professionals, as you know, as our professional eye looks at horses, we don't always get it right. Like there's sometimes I'll look at feet and I'm like, right, I think that's right, and we'll get an x-ray done and I'm way off, and I'm like, how am I so far off? Like that the points of reference are there and yet I've still got it wrong. So sometimes even if we think we're doing the right thing, we can be off. We're only human, you know. And I think the biggest thing as farriers and for farriers is not to get upset and not to get angry that you haven't got it right, because you're not going to get it right all the time. And that was one of the biggest things I had to learn when I was younger, is that I would always aim for perfection, but when I got it wrong, I'd always slam myself, you know. And as farriers, we literally cannot get it right every time. So I think the one thing from a client's point of view is you can't just say, you shouldn't say, oh I've got to change farrier, you know, he's no good. And from our point of view, it's like, oh well, we need to learn from this. So let's go to the x-rays. Let's be there when it's getting done, and let's adjust it and get it re-x-rayed and see where you're at. And that's another real good way of training your eye to get to that to get to that best level you can on that particular horse for the next time. So you don't need to x-ray it every time.
I think that's a really good point, Gareth. You know, often people get foot balance x-rays done and then that's it for 12 months. And you kind of go, well, how do you know that what you did, if there was something to correct, how do you know that what you did corrected it unless you do some after? And again, that's using the x-rays as a tool. And I think very much it's not, you know, x-rays showing something up is definitely not criticism of people and their work. It's more of a, well, we've got the tool available, so let's use it to see. Ultimately, we all have the same aim, which is to have a healthy, sound, happy horse. And if there's something, whether it's not right or it's a maintenance thing that we can use, then it's there. And it's never a case of, well, you've done that, you've done it. It's more of a, here, we've got this here, and you know, see what we can see from it. And another point I wanted to make was for those who've asked the questions about the specific shoes, I was very privileged to be able to go and be at the shoeing competition that Gareth and Selwyn Forge organised. It was probably a wee while ago now, a couple of months ago, but it was a really, really good event for those who are interested in anything to do with feet. And, you know, I think the thing that I really took home from that was not just the 2 days of competition. And yes, it's a competition, but lots of people talk and lots of people share their ideas and stuff as far as feet and soundness and shoeing, but also it fostered some really good discussions and you know, I think probably a lot of people took a lot of stuff away from that and will, you know, make some good, you know, there'll be some good relationships developed from that. So I don't know when your next one is, but I would encourage anyone listening to go.
I've only got a couple more questions actually, and I think we can they can be fairly quickish. I hope maybe. How often, ideally, would you reshoe a horse in wedge pads, party, etc.? Does it get done more often, or?
For me, if that was my horse, I'd probably just keep it at 6 week, depending on how much hoof it grows. If it doesn't grow any hoof, which you'll find out when you take the shoe off and there's no hoof there, you'd probably try and leave it on longer, which contradicts itself. But if you're in that much, if you've got that much going on, then you ideally want as much hoof to grow as possible, so you can adjust as much as you can without compromising hoof integrity. So yeah, depending on how much hoof it grows.
Awesome. And then the last one is, how often does Sarah use the biometric gait analysis? Is it time consuming, and is it reserved for a certain competition level?
Definitely not reserved for certain competition level. It does come down to time a little bit. It's pretty quick once you know where to put the dots and can take the videos. But I would like to use it more, but my days are short.
As a person who organises them, I can confirm that.
Yeah, and so I think if there's things that can be seen with the naked eye on slow motion video, for example, then there isn't the necessity to do that, because, you know, everything comes with a cost. And so I'm not necessarily going to put everything through the biometric gait analysis if we can't see the problem, but it's there as a problem solving tool, and also something that can be used as routine monitoring for people who want to. But more often than not, that's the horses that are competing, or not necessarily competing, but who people want to know with high level of detail what's going on.
I think we've got, I don't know, what's time? Sorry,
we've gone well over the hour, so yeah, I think we can probably wind it up. Thank you, and sorry we've taken so much of your evening, Gareth. I really, really appreciate. I hope not too many people have fallen asleep because it's got so late. But yeah. So thank you, and thanks everyone for attending, and I very much appreciate. And yeah, if there are subjects you'd like to see in the future, drop us a line, and we'll get better at the technology as we go.
Yeah, good job, Sarah. Great presentation.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks
Thanks for your
Thank you,
contribution.
Sarah, for doing all the questions. And yeah, I hope everyone enjoyed it.